Hello all, this is Saradhani signing in, and in continuation to series of what's new in 2023 release wave 1, there was a question that was asked, and today video we'll try to answer that. Is how you create a new Business Central service, and then how you also create a web service instance that is pointing to that service. So if you know about it, great, you can skip this video. If you don't know about it, let's dive into it and let's try to understand what are those steps to kind of keep it simple. So to begin with, the first thing that you need is why you need a new service. There can be multiple reasons behind it. The one very common reason is maybe you are doing a failover server. That in case if my main server kind of goes down where my services are hosted, I should have another backup server or service tier available on a different server so that the users can just point to the different URL and get access to Business Central while my server kind of comes up. You might be doing it for load sharing, that okay, all my sales user use this service tier, and all my purchase user or any other category kind of uses the other service tier. So that's the reason behind it. Or you might be creating a new service for a test environment or for development. So there can be multiple reasons why you want a new service. So let's understand how we do that. So to do that, what you need to do is first get into your Business Central service tier or the machine where the service tier component are installed and search for Windows PowerShell ISE. Windows PowerShell ISE kind of makes it simple to run these complex PowerShell commands. So that's why I like it. Once you are here, make sure you run this as administrator. Once you run that, it'll pop up a confirmation message, which is happening on my other screen, and then you come to a screen like this. Now, once you are here, what we'll try to do is this is Windows PowerShell. It does not know that what kind of commands you are executing, and Business Central commands are packed in a bundle, which is stored in your service folder. So where is my service folder? It's in my program files, x86, Business Central, that version that you are in. Oh, sorry, I should have gone to C program files, not x86. Okay, Business Central 220. So this is the path where my Business Central commands are stored in a file called, I guess, nav admin something, nav admin tools. This is the PowerShell script, which contains everything about your Business Central related PowerShell scripts. So what you need to do is you need to, let me zoom this in, and while I'm zooming this in, can I change the font somewhere? Maybe. Let me see. Sometimes people complain that it looks a little bit smaller. Let me zoom this in quite a bit. Okay. So how you do it? You do an import, and I'm going to import a module. And then where is my module? It's in my C program files, Microsoft Business Central 220 service, and then .ps1. So this is where all my Business Central PowerShell commands are available in this path or in this file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this. The white green icon tells you that you are running the selection or where your cursor is. So once you run it, it'll show you all the commands in this area. So let's zoom this in. What I can do is all available here, and this video is not to talk about all these commands, but if there's any of these commands that you want me to talk further about, let me know in comment section and I'll be happy to talk about it. What we are going to talk about today is one command, which is new nav server instance. New nav server instance. Yes, it's surprising, but it is still called nav server instance. I'm hoping Microsoft will change it sometime in future, but this is the command. Now you don't know what parameters it need. You don't know anything, and that's where the power of ISE kind of comes into play. Once you have loaded this, you can search for that command here. You might not find anything because this panel is not get refreshed. If you don't see this panel, go to your view menu and say show command add-on, and then refresh this and it'll show you the new nav server instance. Now with this panel, it helps you what kind of parameters this command need, so that you are kind of informed about, oh, I need to set these parameters. Wherever there's star, those are mandatory. So the first thing is what my service will be called. Let's say I'll call it bc22 dev. And then I need some ports and what kind of credential I'm using. Windows. Anything that is not set to mandatory without star, if you don't specify that, that will get copied from the parent service, which is in this case bc220, which we created in the last video during installation. Then the first port that you need is client service port. Now, if you just have Business Central installed, one version installed, you can always go to your service folder and look for your custom setting.config. Open that and you will notice what parameters you are using. So the first parameter that I'm looking for, or that I already used, is the server instance, which I have set to bc22 dev. And that is what that parameter look like in the previous service. Then it needs a management service port. Let's search for management service port. We'll find it somewhere. We see a client service port which is set to 7046. So I'll just copy this as it is. And instead of saying 70, I'll say 71. I'll be using 71 series more or less. Now I'm looking for management service port. Here it is, 7045. So I'll just go ahead, copy this and make it 7145. Do I want to have a different database name? Not yet. I'll be using it in the future video, so we'll see how we can change that. But right now I want it to copy all these details from the parent service, which is this config file. Developer service port. I don't know what that looks like, so let's search for it. Developer service port is 7049. This is what you use in your development. Okay. Anything else? Management API service port. Okay. And API service port, it's set to 7046. Let's change it also. And let's set it to 7186. OData. That's something if you are using web services. It's 7048. So let's do it 7148. I don't want to change my service account. Let's keep it as it is. What is SOAP? It's 7047. So let's copy this and paste it here, 7147. And that's it. I have set some mandatory and some properties that I wanted to change, and I left some of these properties. So I have defined these mandatory properties, and then I have set some of the properties just to show you that that's how you can do it. Now before I hit to execute this command, let's have a look on this folder. There should not be any folder at this moment called instances, which is not here. As soon as I run this command, there will be a new folder created here called instances, which normally stores the delta of the main service and the new service that you have been creating, that you have created. So now we are good at this point to run this. And before I do that, I should also show you my service panel or services page, and you will see that I have a BC140, BC210, 220, and I have 90 service. So now as soon as I run it, we should see one more service there. So let's run it. The command will get copied here and it will create that server instance in a while. And as soon as that happens, I should see a new folder popped up here called, and it's completed. As you can see here, I should have a folder called instances now. If I go back to my services page and refresh this, I should see one more service here called BC22 dev, which is not yet started, which is okay. I might start later. When I get into instances folder, I'll see my new service that I have given the name, which is bc22dev. Inside this, I'll find a delta file for the service and then a custom setting config related to this particular instance. So when I open this, you will notice that whatever the parameters that I have changed, like the database name, oh sorry, the service name, the port numbers are listed. The properties that I did not change, like the database name, the property value will be same as it was in the main custom setting config file, which is bc22cu0us. So that's the same service. So anything which is not mandatory and you don't change it in the panel will get copied from the main service as it is in the new service created. Okay. Now we have the service created. It is pointing to the same Cronus database that we have in our SQL server. Let's try to start that and see what happens. As soon as I start it, if everything looks good, the port is not conflicting, it should actually get started. Now, let's talk about another thing while this is starting. Yes, we have created a service and that should do everything in a typical NAV world. But why it will not work in a Business Central world? The client access Business Central using a browser, and that is something which is get hosted on your IIS, something like this. So let me refresh this, and there are these three web clients. BC220, which is pointing to a database based on the service that it is mapped to. To have a different web URL for my users, I'll need a new web server instance or a website more or less, so that user can point to which will be the new web server instance that I'll create will be linked to this service, and then it may connect to the same database or it may connect to a different database. That all is possible. There can be multiple services pointing to one single SQL database that you have. So now what you are trying to do, you're trying to create a new web server instance. How you do that? Let's go back to PowerShell. This will keep on running, so we don't have to worry about it. This time, just change this a little bit, and we call it as new nav web server instance. Now, if you see multiple commands here, that means you did some mistake sometime, and these are showing you based on all the versions that you have installed. And if that happens, the best approaches is to not run the command here. You can build the command here, but you should not run it from here because it might be compiling it against the different assemblies more or less. So I'll talk about this in a while. Let's see what happens. So when you click on it, it says, what is your server? I say, okay, the server is my local server. No problems with that. Which service tier you would like it to connect to? And this kind of did not start. We'll see that in a while. It's starting. Okay. The service that I want to connect it to, or the server instance, is BC22dev. So I'll say, okay, I would like this website to be connected to BC22. I guess I have an extra dash. Let me see. BC22dev. Okay. So let's change this. What you want to call your web service instance? What is that? That is the name that you see here, BC220. I'll say, okay, I would like to call it as BC220 but dev. You want to add a firewall exception? Yes, that makes sense. Do you have any certificate that you're using for authentication and all? What kind of authentication you're using? What is the client service port for this? Because if you don't specify it, it will again copy it from the parent. So I'll come here and see what is my client service port that I've set, which is 7146. Okay. Okay. Do you want to change any other properties? No. I have changed the management service port, so I'll have to go back and see what my management service port was. Okay. Anything else? Nothing. That's okay. Website port should be 8080, which is already set for the bean service. So it should kind of copy it from there. You don't have to kind of start it. We'll see how that goes. Once you are done, instead of running it, because there are chances that it may fail, because I'm pretty sure one of these are pointing to BC22, one of them is pointing to BC21, one of them is pointing to nav 14 or BC14. So I just want to make sure that my command runs on the right assemblies that I want it to run for, which is for BC22. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this command, because this is, I prefer to use it because it gives me this GUI to set different parameters. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to copy this, and instead of loading this, I can actually run this panel, which is available in your computer after installation, which is called as Business Central Administration Cell. Now this is again a PowerShell, but it's a command line. So it will not give you a GUI thing, but you can run your Business Central commands here. So as soon as I started, you will see all these commands which get loaded after running this script will automatically load. But make sure you run this also as administrator. Once you run it, you get a confirmation, and that pops up your command, which automatically loads all the commands which are needed. So it's the same thing. Instead of using a GUI based, I'm using the command line. And now I am sure that it is pointing to 22.05, and I can just right click and paste the command. But by running this command here, I'm being very sure that this command will run against assemblies for BC22, not for BC21 or BC14. You don't have to remove it if you don't want to. I just hate to kind of use the Microsoft thing, prefixes over there. So the same properties that I've said here are available here, and you will notice that as soon as this command runs, I'll see a new website hosted here or available here for use. So let's run this, which happens by clicking enter. So we're good. Let's click enter. Now what's it's doing, it's creating that website. It's copying the file from the default web server instance, which is 220, and make sure that gets published here. The new settings that I have specified gets changed there, and then once it is done, I should be able to see a website here, and it's creating. It's done. So right now, if you look at it, it is pointing to 8080 in the same way as this one is pointing, but this is pointing to a different service tier. And how I know that? Which is when I hit on explore, I get into this new folder. So now if you go here, you will see a BC220 and a BC220 dev. And inside this, there will be a configuration file or a JSON file, nav settings. And if I open this file, I'll see that this one is pointing to a service called BC22 dev, which I've just said. And it'll also point to the different ports that I have assigned to it. And any property that I did not assign or which was not mandatory kind of get copied from the parent. In this case, from this folder file. So with this, you can create a new web server instance, which is right now will not run because the service is not running eventually. If the service is running, then this panel will also run. So now what we have done is we have created a web server instance and also a service, which is still starting, but it's running. So now if it is running, I should be able to run this, and at this moment it will point to the same database but with a different BC220 dev URL, whereas this one will also pointing to the same database but with the URL of 220. This one is 220 dev. They both will open the same page. They both will open the same database, will fetch the data from the same database more or less. But because these are two different services, they are kind of having a possibility to kind of distinguish between who can access service A or B, or developers will only work based on this. There's some error based on the license. I might not have the correct license, which I can set, but that's okay. That's something else we can talk about later. Okay. There's a license error. I need to set that, but that's how, for this video, you can create a new web service. Uh, uh, you can create a new Business Central service and a web service instance from this. If you haven't created it, do follow these steps and create these services. I'm going to use these services in my next video. And the error related to license is because I did not have a license loaded on my Business Central environment. So you can just load that license. How you load a license is, if it is something that interests you, let me know into the comments, and I'll add that video into the YouTube channel as soon as possible. So tomorrow I'm going to do something which will utilize whatever we have done today, and we'll use it. So let's summarize what we did. Using PowerShell ISE, it gives you a GUI-based environment which shows you what are the mandatory parameters and what are optional parameters, and you can set them easily. If you see multiple commands that we saw in the web server instance case, the best way to run your commands in this case is using the administration shell for Business Central version that you would like to run it from. These commands more or less remain same for all the Business Central version that's released. So if you are using Business Central 21, 20 or 19, you can use the same commands as it is, or even before. The web server instance is created so that the user get a new website to kind of log into. So that's the intent of this. And if you learn something new, do share this video with your colleagues and friends. If you are new to this channel, please do subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next day with the next video about Business Central 2023 Release Wave 1. Have a great day.